I mean, this is a pretty common issue. A simple tip for people who are considering, automation, or bringing on a new system. It's normally sold, this will save you 2 heads of labor, or this will save you 3 heads of labor. And cost is important, but also look at productivity. Okay, so what I mean by that is, if you bring in a new piece of equipment, you've gone to the trade show, you've talked to the sales guy, they've said this will replace, 3 heads of labor. That shouldn't be the start and the end of the conversation for you. The other part is, will this actually get me, 30% more output? Is this going to mean I'm going to be able to deliver, 30% more roofs, trusses, for example, right?
Welcome to the Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help home service pros cut through the noise, sharpen their business tools, and reclaim the profit, freedom, and impact they've been missing. I'm your host, Richard Walsh, Profit Freedom Coach, and I'm here to help you stop grinding and start growing. Let's sharpen the spear. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest, because that's all we ever have is incredible guests. I can't help myself. I bring on the best. And today we got Damien Lacey with us. And Damien, as we always do in STS, no one knows Damien better than Damien. Damien, give us the backstory, bring us up to speed, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Hello, Richard. First, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today and to speak to your audience. So yeah, my name's Damien Lacey. I am the founder of a productivity improvement consultancy called OE Partners. So that stands for Operational Excellence. A bit of my backstory. So from Australia, trained as a mechanical engineer. Worked in the automotive industry for quite a few years in a component supplier called Robert Bosch, and then moved to Toyota. I spent a lot of time looking at products, looking at processes, trying to make them more efficient, trying to streamline them, trying to get cost out, if we're clear about it. Yeah, that included spending a number of years in Japan as well, in the head office there at Toyota. Yeah, and so decided to come back to Australia, and the automotive industry, which I was working in that time, pretty much wound up, right? So the industry, it's a bit different to the US. It really contracted, and basically without government support, it shut down. And so then I decided to start consulting to businesses. How do we improve productivity? How do we streamline what we do? How do we become more cost effective? And that was the genesis of OE Partners. Other than that, wife and 4 kids and that sort of stuff keeps me busy. But yeah, great to be on your podcast today, Richard.
Excellent. Yeah, Damien, that's great. I'm a big fan of efficiency. Okay, I like it a lot. I like operational excellence. I like that a lot too. It's always a factor regardless of your business. Okay, you can manufacture, you can cut grass. Okay, it's all about operational excellence. It really is. It really comes down to that. The more I work with businesses over all these years, that's what we try to really perfect. Because when you get to that level and you're able to see that and create that and it spills over into systems, right, and processes and things like that too, right? They
absolutely
kind of go hand in hand, right? You kind of can't do one without the other,
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, being in business, it's tough. It's challenge. It's a never-ending challenge, and it's endlessly fascinating. I'm sure you would feel that, Richard, and your guests. And we're always trying to be better, right? How do we compete? How do we deliver more for our customers? And yeah, you can, if you're fortunate, right? If you're an Apple or an Nvidia, you've got some unique product that only you can create. That's fantastic, right? And good for you. Or if you've got such a huge scale, like an IBM or an SAP or something, where you're just so big, you're so integrated, you aren't going to fail in any time soon, right? For the rest of the businesses that don't fall into those two categories, how do you compete? And the answer really is, it's how you run your business. It's how you execute. So being operationally excellent is is your competitive advantage. It's your way of becoming more profitable, deliver better service, etc.
Yeah, I think there's that balance between, you're delivering high value, yeah, maybe there's 10 other competitors doing exactly the same thing you are. That's when it gets to be challenging. And that's where like what you're talking about comes into play, because the sad part about that being in what they call the red ocean, right? You got a lot of, especially specific competitors, tends to be a battle on price.
Yes,
And
that's exactly right.
And that's a tough one. So if you got to play that game, which I don't like to play, okay, I like to differentiate myself, but you better be unbelievably efficient, right? And you got to
exactly right.
really understand your costs. And I mean, it's, it's kind of the Walmart model or whatever that behemoth is. But you look at that stuff where you've always got to be the low price. It's miserable. I don't envy anybody who has to compete on that level. But talk about that, because that really is, even in the car industry, it's kind of similar. I mean, I know you've got different brands, but even though the platforms and everything else are kind of, you're competing on these platform levels, right? You're basically, well, everyone uses basically the same platform, this class of car. So other than the extra bells and whistles, what do you got?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So competing on price is not a fun game, or it can be a fun game, but you're absolutely right. You've got to be really executing your business model tremendously well, and if you can bring on tools, systems, ideas, and make your business more efficient, and you can, drop your prices and take market share, well, then, that's fantastic. More power to you. But yeah, it requires a focus, a simple example, and, you can take a host of them, right? We do a lot of work with manufacturing companies. We do a lot of work with construction companies, and you can think of any technology that came into your industry, right? When it first came in, fantastic. So let's say nail guns. Okay. We used to build houses by hammering nails into a piece of wood with a physical hammer. Now, the guy or girl who managed to get themselves an automatic nail gun, they killed it. They had a competitive advantage, and they were probably able to charge the same prices, do it faster, do it quicker, get home early at the end of the day. Or maybe get more building done, right? The trouble is, others also see the same technologies, the same systems. They look laterally across their industry. What are people doing? And then that efficiency becomes the standard. And so, that then translates into a price drop. The first few early adopters took it as a bit of a profit gain, but then when it becomes standard, then that becomes a price drop. Yeah. So, it's something that we have to continually do. Again, it's what makes the game endlessly fascinating. There's always something better. There's always a way of getting sharper. But yeah, that's what's going to keep us, in the game and ahead of the game.
You remind me of kind of a funny story. I'm at a friend's house and all our kids are there, and he's talking about roofing. I have a roofing business, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he's raving how really everyone should be still hand nailing, and he's an engineer. Okay. So it's like, he's saying that's the way it should be done. I go, and I'm looking at him like, for real? I go, you don't know much about roofers, do you? And this is just some inside baseball stuff. I go, a lot of them are like substance abusers. Okay. So like they show hungover, drunk. You think they're really going to be putting 5 nails in every one of them they're hammering, and all your shingles, like who's actually counting those? Right. Like, and on the same, so I'm trying to go, do you still hand saw with a saw blade back and forth? And he goes, well, no, I got a skill saw. I go, why? Wouldn't it be better if you hand sawed?
Sure.
I go, this is it. So we're kind of just joking, but I'm kind of like, really, dude? Like, but at the same time, I've seen these same roofer guys who have their substance issues nailing with no nails in the gun. Okay.
Wow.
They just keep going. Okay. So I've seen both sides, but the whole thing, like, do you know how, like, you're out of your mind? You got a bag, you're in there and it's nailing. I know guys are fast. They're good in the old days, right? These guys can do it, but you're not keeping up with a nail gun.
Yeah. It's an interesting point though, where, you've got an old way of doing it. And it's not to say it's inefficient. Like it is efficient if you know how to do it well. And there might be a case where, look, I don't think your friend who's hammering nails in one at a time with the hammer is going to be super efficient. But you've got the old way of doing it, then the new way of doing it comes along, and you might get your best guy doing it the old way, and you get your average guy doing it the new way, and the best guy is actually a little bit better. And so there's almost an argument to say, well, let's hold on to the old. But as you know, you can't just plan for the rainy day. So you can't just plan for the sunny day. You've got to plan for the rainy day. And with new technology, with new systems, even if in the early days with your average people, it's not as good as the old way. It's not the cue to abandon the new way, right?
Right. Yeah. And also you can't duplicate those guys who are really good at their craft. That's the problem. You can't keep up with the demand. You just can't.
That's right. Look, I'm an engineer and I'm a big systems person and all about standard process. You know, I shouldn't say, as much as we would like to take the human out, you can't take the human out, and not to the nth degree, right? And so people will be part of the equation, and they should be a part of the equation. I'm not anti-people, but yeah, you know, your roofing contractors there who can't find the nails for the nail gun, right? That's a different set of problems. Yeah. Doesn't matter how good that nail gun is. If you haven't got people who've switched the light on upstairs, then you're going to be in trouble.
You know, and you bring up a good point, Damien, because I had a little business summit here for my office location here, and we were talking to some high-end contractors, commercial contractors, and they now have the masonry robots that are laying brick. Super cool, right? And everyone's like,
yeah.
I'm going, well, you know, same resistance, right? Yeah, I'm like, have you ever seen a 50-year-old mason and the way they have to walk? Okay, they're just broken, okay? Yeah. No one wants to really do that for their whole life, okay? 30, 40, now what you have is a screwdriver, and you're watching the robots making sure they're dialed in, and you're correcting them when they need it, okay? Still people involved, but the bricks are perfect. I mean,
yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. And you know, there's a couple of things with automation, right? One is it's never as good as it's reported to be, right? It's never going to completely eliminate all labor, and you can in fact overdo it. You know, we work with a lot of manufacturers, and you know, talking about productivity and improvement. Automation is going to be part of that conversation, but you can over-invest in automation, invest in the wrong spots, and not get the productivity gain that you thought you would. So, you know, striking the balance between good humans knowing what they're doing, smart people, giving them the right automation at the right point in the process. That's where you really get, you know, a kickstart with productivity for sure.
And it's just funny to talk about it. I'm kind of smiling because a guy invested in this company. He's doing this. Hey, we all need new automation on our machinery to turn this stuff out. So he goes to the trade show.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, now you're talking to salesmen who want to sell their product, and they sold them all this stuff that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
He took it back, installed it. 50% of everything that came on the line was garbage. So, so got all the wrong stuff. So I'm laughing because it's kind of humorous. You know, some people have more money than sense, you know, and they're not really they're not bringing them out to what they actually do. You don't just, you know what I mean? These are multi-million-dollar investments. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It's amazing, isn't it? Multi-million-dollar investments and not enough thought put into, is this actually going to make me money? I mean, this is a pretty common issue. A simple tip for people who are considering, you know, automation or bring on a new system. It's normally sold, this will save you 2 heads of labor, or this will save you 3 heads of labor. And cost is important, but also look at productivity. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you bring in a new piece of equipment, you've gone to the trade show, you've talked to the sales guy, they've said this will replace, you know, 3 heads of labor. That shouldn't be the start and the end of the conversation for you. The other part is, will this actually get me, you know, 30% more output? You know, is this going to mean I'm going to be able to deliver, you know, 30% more roofs, trusses, for example, right? Because if you can do that, if you can save money on labor and get more out. Well, that's a winner. That's a winner. Because if your machine is sitting idle because you don't have the work, or if because the machine isn't hitting where the bottleneck is in your business, that's not where the pinch in the pipe is, well, that saving, it's all just a nice idea, right? So when looking at equipment, if you can get a cost saving and a productivity boost, like get more out the door, that's a winner. That's a winner.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people, they confuse the two. They think they're losing labor. Like, I'm saving on labor, which that's a savings. Okay, you get it. That's very,
Sure.
that's quantifiable.
Yeah.
But again, if it's not producing, if you're doing a 1-for-1 exchange, I don't know if it's worth it. If it's really, I pay him $50,000 a year to run this. Now I don't have to pay him $50,000 a year. So
Right.
all you're going to save, granted, is $50,000 a year, which can go to your profit, your bottom line, but you haven't changed your output.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And the cost of that automation is probably it's going to take you 7 years, 8 years of that 50,000 you're saving to pay for the piece of automation, right? So that's what I'm saying. They don't kind of run the real numbers, real ROI. What's the real ROI on efficiency?
Yeah.
Okay, and automation.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there's just so many different examples of that, like working with metal fabrication shop. Okay, so they're making all sorts of different parts, and cutting it, bending it, welding it, sending it out, and helping this business, sort of a medium-sized business, get more out. And the owner absolutely convinced that I need to go get a new laser cutter. I need to get a new laser cutter. And that will take my cycle time down from 45 minutes down to less than 20 minutes, Damien. It's going to be like twice as fast. Not knowing that, hang on, before the job hits the machine, there's 2 days of work. And after it leaves the machine, there's another 2 days of, handling the parts and checking them and putting them on the shelf and getting the paperwork sorted and arranging the delivery and all that kind of stuff. So, really being able to see the end-to-end chain is super, super important.
Yeah, it really is. I've seen it in manufacturing, and it is every step. There's always like a bottleneck, and sometimes it's a person, because the person is actually the problem. There's that too. You have to to address that. Like, you just have to go.
Yeah,
that's
right.
You're why everyone quits. Okay, or whatever the case, right? Like, we need to get rid of you. But then at the same time, then there may be a machine, right? Or there's a machine that continuously breaks.
Yeah.
There's a million factors is the point, right? So the analysis. So really, when you're talking about this, like when you're in consulting, Damien, you really got to look at the big picture. They can't walk you to one machine and say, automate this, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
right. Yeah.
I mean, but they think that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you said, if they change this one thing, it'll make all the difference. And it's
that's right.
complete.
And sometimes, it's a tough gig because you've got to be, you got to be polite, you got to be respectful, but at the same time, you can't take their lead, because, if they knew exactly what was going on, they, we wouldn't be here to help them. There's no point. Yeah, you definitely see that a lot, where I want you to do it this way, and this is exactly where you need to look. And I'll step it out for you. Like, I know we know what we're doing here. Let's take a wide view and then zoom in. Yeah, definitely that can happen.
There's another factor too, and you have to have run into this. Okay, so I'm gonna lay it out. Like, you come in, you got the perfect plan, Damien. You've come in, you got everything's good, and then you leave, and you come back in 2 months, and like nothing's working.
Meaning, working.
Nobody's making anybody work. It's the human component. You got all these great charts. You got here's the red zone, and no one's implementing it. Your operations manager, I'm air quoting here, is not having people do the work. But what do they blame? The machinery.
Yeah, that's right. They'll start saying it's everyone's fault. Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a bit of a theme today, but you can't completely remove the human, right? You'll still need a talented operator. You'll still need a talented manager there. At least for the time being, at least for the foreseeable future. Absolutely. You can't get away from the fact.
Yeah, I went to it was Certainteed, who are Saint-Gobain. They're owned by Saint-Gobain, which is the largest construction supplier in the world, right? Been around since 1700s. So I go there to the shingle manufacturing plant, right? And you watch these lines, and they give you a tour, and you're looking. There's just people standing there with their arms crossed, leaning against the wall. Yeah, no one's doing anything. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're walking through, and of course, first thing I'm thinking, like, well, these people got to get to work.
Yeah.
You know, then we kind of take the tour, and the guy goes, "Did you notice something?" I go, "Yeah, no one's doing anything." Yeah. And he's like, "Exactly. That's exactly what we want. Okay. They're only here to watch if something goes awry. It's all automated." He goes, if it goes bad, they're on it. So if they're not moving and doing something, things are running perfect. I go, that's really interesting.
That's a brave business philosophy there.
But you only see like 7 people on the whole line. These are multi-million-dollar lines, you know. So I'm not saying there's 30 people standing around, but like it was just interesting to see. So I'm just kind of playing that other side where these guys like
for sure.
It's really fascinating to watch. And then here's one. Let me cap this off. So you get all the way around, and then they wrap the bundles of shingles, right? Most of them do it in plastic now. There's one they're still wrapping in paper. And this is a ridge cap and stuff. We hated it as roofers. Like it gets wet, it gets ruined. You can't. And like, okay, can I ask you what the deal is with that? Because you know that we all hate that. He goes, I know, but it's like, he said it's like $2 million, whatever, just for the wrapping machine. Wow. He goes, so with this brand and how much quantity we go through because it's only a ridge cap, he goes, we can't justify the money yet.
Right.
We're going to get there. But we just can't do it. So there's a lot of terrors, a lot of waste and stuff like that. But they're unbelievably efficient, is my point.
Well, yeah, for sure.
They didn't pull the trigger on that money because they're not going to get the return yet.
Yeah, that's great. They didn't get bamboozled by the sales guy at the exhibition. They've done their numbers. That's exactly. Exactly right. And look, I mean, to go back to your point there, you're right. You know, you haven't got 30 people standing around, and the magic of automation these days, I suppose, is that you can get more out of that same individual. So if that one person is tending, 5 machines, 6 machines, 7 machines, then you're right. That actually is a great outcome. They're like 5 times more productive thanks to the automation that's in place.
Yeah, I just think it's important that people, as we talk about this, like there's no one and done. It's just not. Automation is just a word, but it's like a massive umbrella. There's AI voice now. That's automation. It can do all this really cool stuff. It can take and you say, well, no, it can take someone to take the human, let them do more important things.
Yeah.
Instead of answering the phone. Answering the phone, no one wants to do that. They'd rather be doing something else, give them a little more challenge, though no one's going to complain about that, right? So it's just, I see it all around now, with AI and all these other implementations of this stuff. And it's like you said, when it's new, it's a little rough.
Yeah, for sure. And look, there's a lot of fear and concern around it as well. Is it going to take our jobs and all that kind of stuff? Look, I think humans are pretty good at finding stuff to do, The work's not going to run out.
Yeah.
There's always going to be things to do. It really will just be, how do we get more done? That's really what I think what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this, Damien, on from efficiency and automation, all this stuff, as you implement this stuff where you improve it, what percentage of that, as you're doing that, maybe not you in particular, does this cause additional innovation? As you're in this process, all of a sudden you realize, like, hey, we could do this or do this if we had this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that part of what you do?
For sure. I mean, the big step change, I think, is almost in people's heads, right? You've got a standard business with a bunch of people working really hard, doing their job, getting the next order out, getting the next project complete. But they're very much in it. They're in it day to day in the battle, not really thinking much beyond, okay, what do I need to do next? What's the next customer? And don't necessarily have the opportunity or the wherewithal to think, whoa, hang on, how are we doing this? What's the best way of doing this? And so when we engage with customers, we are definitely taking them out of the day to day for a small period of time and thinking, well, how are we actually doing this? What are the steps we follow? What are the tools we use? What goes well? What doesn't go well? You just need to get them started on one problem, right? If you can get a team that wasn't engaged and get them working on one, valuable problem, doesn't need to be the biggest in the world, and they figure out, hang on, why is this happening? What's the real cause of this? What are some ideas on how to fix that? And then they fix it. That is a massive step change. Not necessarily that the process hasn't been reinvented, but you've proven to the team that they're not just there to punch the nails in the board or do their step. They're also there to think about, what's a better way of doing this? Yeah, so and then that becomes a habit, right? And it sort of gains momentum from there.
Yeah, we find, just like a machine goes down. So I use this one of my clients, and everyone stands there and looks at it for 30 minutes, and it doesn't start itself back up. It doesn't work. And then they go ask the owner what they should do. So we have to train them to troubleshoot. If we built all that stuff out, so they go through this whole process. But at the same time, once these guys start to see that and get that feedback, it's just like with owners, what we do as business advisors. I want them to get out of the day-to-day so they can see it from the higher view. That's when they can innovate. Because they're usually started as tech guys, operators, right? Craftsmen. But then they end up doing that all the time. They never get a moment to well, how could we do this better? Because they actually would know if they had the time to think about it, because that's their thing, right? And I love the same thing, pulling the people out who are doing the plugging in A to B all day, give them that chance to step away and say, well, because people aren't dumb.
No, no, they're
and
not.
The people on the floor, they see it every day. Every day they see it. And if you just ask them, you'll probably have a bucket full of suggestions, right?
Yeah.
Because they know.
And you'll also find the scenario where the owner is then pulling his hair out. And even as far as you, Richard, you've taken all your hair out altogether.
It's because of them.
But no, only joking. But, where they'll say, my people just don't take any ownership. They just stand around. And look, in some instances, your people don't take ownership because they're just not the kind of people that take ownership. And you need to identify that and put them in the right role where they don't need to, or they need to find another bus. But more often than not, it's not necessarily the people, right? Because if you've got team member after team member after team member who all don't take ownership, you got to think, well, maybe it's not the team member. Maybe it's, it's that old phrase, if everyone's an idiot, if everyone's an idiot, what, maybe not, maybe you're the idiot, right? Sort of thing.
Right.
And think about, well, is it trained helplessness? Have you kind of brought this up, or is it actually innate? So, yeah.
It's really interesting, Dan, because you do see it in the more, I work with a lot of businesses, and whether you want to call them enablers, some people, they get accustomed to the chaos and they like it.
Yeah.
They actually like it. Because it's this you need me. It's just, they need me. It's this, it's kind of an ego kind of thing. It's no, they need me. I got to be there because it's like an escape from life. Okay.
The superhero.
Because business can, it gives you permission to check out of life.
Yeah.
Because you got to do your business, So if it's all chaotic, then I got to be here a lot. And if I don't open the door, business doesn't start. So it's an interesting, I'm going to just call it a philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. But I see it. And and I can guarantee you, Damon, 0.8% of the time out of 10, it's the owner's the problem. The entrepreneur is in their own way. They're the stumbling block because they can't get out of their own way.
And they enjoy it. In some instances, they really enjoy that role of the superhero, right? They love, seeing the bat signal in the sky and then whacking on the cape and then running in to solve the problem. And what a better feeling is there than, solving a really important problem. But yeah, there's a limit to that.
Yeah, they're stuck in the tactical. They love fixing it, but they never permanently fix it. I had an uncle. He was a mechanic, worked for my father. We ran golf courses. you remember MacGyver? He's always got the bubble gum wrapper. That's my uncle as a mechanic. He will fix it to finish cutting the greens, but he'll never permanently fix it. He'll be back in every day. He's hot wiring stuff, trying to get it going. Like, why don't you just take the time and fix it all the way? Find out why it keeps breaking. But I see that a lot. There's this addiction to the tactical because it's accomplishment in their mind.
And it's immediate, right? You can make that tactical fix. You can get it running. All right, on to the next thing. And it becomes sort of this kind of a, quick fix, dopamine rush almost kind of scenario. Because you know what? Stopping, let's say you ran out of materials, right? You ran out of materials for the job. And okay, quick fix, just run down to the hardware store, get your materials, get back on the job, right? Problem solved, and on to the next thing. Wait, hang on. Let's figure out why we ran out of materials in the first place. What broke down in the system? That's not as fun. Well, actually, it depends on who you are, Richard. But, if you're an action kind of guy, you want to jump in the car and go fix it. But to solve it properly and figure out why weren't the materials on the sheet, where did that information get captured upstream? Whose job was it? Where did the system break down? How can we permanently fix it? That's a lot more work. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's more time than just jumping in the car and getting the materials and getting back onto the job site. But it's the stuff that helps, future you, right? That's going to help you in 3 months' time, that work of fixing the process. Not today. Like that's for sure. And so, your superhero whack on the cape kind of business operator, that's new behavior, right? That's a new way of working. But it's the way of working that will steadily pull your business to a higher level.
Right. So what I have to do a lot of times, and I wonder if you run into this as well, you have to, when speaking to an owner like that, a guy who lives in the tactical, okay, but he knows there's this, he's called you in. You didn't just show up because you saw a problem. Okay, hey, I can fix that. Right? So, but they've called you because they know something, but they're that in the tactical thing. It's incremental quantitating everything you do. Like, if you can really show them the numbers, like you said, the 3 months, you're going to do some work now, but then for the next 5 years, look how this compounds. Okay. You're talking millions of dollars saved. Like, it's not a little bit. It's not a save $5,000. Yeah. Okay. You're talking, these are big 7-figure. And we have to walk them through this process, and they have to go, so just take a breath. Think about that. The problem comes up, you get to go in and solve the problem, but you got to go to step 2. Like you said, where did it happen? Did someone misorder? Do we have this? Because if we can fix this, and you only got to do it the first time, this is going to run, and and it just compounds the savings. You create profit. You create profit by doing that stuff. Not just efficiency. You create, profit, not revenue. You create, like, money you get to keep. That's what I have to tell you.
More left over.
Yeah, you get to keep this money. This is your money.
Yeah. And you make a really good point there, about the numbers, because, we all think, I should do this. I think I should do that. But it's different with knowing, right? If you absolutely know something is the right thing to do versus, I think I should do that, that's huge. And that's what's really going to drive action. And that comes from your numbers. If you know your numbers, you will absolutely, you'll execute with more energy. Because it's not just a nice idea, or maybe I should do this. So I have to do this. I must do this. It will definitely, improve your profit, etc. As you said.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger challenges especially with small to mid-sized businesses. It's a challenge because we're going back to we're the technician, we're the craftsman, we're the guys doing the work. Even though now we have a crew or we have 10 people or 15, you're still stuck. That is not comfortable because you're not really a numbers person. You're a doer.
Essentially. Yeah. That's it.
You're a bill. So it's hard to really go so it's how do we simplify it, how we bring it in, but you really got to trying to draw them back. Even with accountants, I have to sometimes say, well, we check our P&L every month, or we do a quarter review. I go, I prefer weekly on the P&L. I have to train these guys to look at it every week because you have to reset it better. It's new habits. You have to retrain behavior. Okay. And it's horrible because we're just not into it. But once you say grab it and they make that turn,
Mm.
all the additional suggestions they're going to get.
Yeah.
Because now
Yeah.
it's just like becoming a systems thinker. If you're not a systems thinker, you
Mm.
don't look at your business as a system. As soon as you do, you start seeing systems everywhere. Or the lack thereof.
Yeah. That's right.
Whether you're at the fast food place or you're
Yeah.
at whatever, the car dealer, you're seeing systems.
Yeah.
You're seeing
Yeah.
processes. And if you don't, again, if you start out doing the thing and you don't want to do the thing for someone else, so you do it for yourself and you make a little more money, but you have to change these behaviors and these ways of thinking. And that's where you start to really get traction and be able to grow and then eventually scale your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. Spot on.
Yes. When you go in, Damien, and you're going to consult for someone, they're looking for efficiencies, kind of give me a high view on kind of the process, and I know every business is different and all that kind of stuff, but like, let's kind of put a timeline on it. You know what I mean? Like we do boop, 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 and we go through this stuff. Kind of give us a little high view on that.
Look, I'll give you the worst answer in the world, right? But we'll get it out of the way. It depends.
They're my favorite.
It depends. But look, typically we're working with customers over a few years. Okay. So they know where they are now is not where they want to be. It takes a number of initiatives over a period of time to get to that next level. And so it's not a quick fix, one and done kind of scenario. But generally, it starts with, an analysis, a plan, a strategy. So we work with customers each step of the way, really understand your current business. How is that working? What are the processes? What are the systems that you use? Show me some numbers. How many people have you got? How fast can you get work out? Are there any mistakes that get made? Really understand your current state. And then we put that to one side and map out what a potential future state could look like. So blank sheet of paper, let's take away any assumptions. Let's be ambitious here. And we work with hundreds of different businesses, and we've worked in really some of the world's best companies, right? And so we're, a bit bullish in terms of what's possible, and we will push a client to be a bit more ambitious in terms of what that future state could look like. But let's map out what that could be. Let's assume we can fix a lot of these operational issues that we found in the current and model that, so we map out what that future state could be. We say, okay, we're going to put automation here. We're going to put a new system in there. We're going to fix that, that problem, and then see what the impact could be. And that's usually a pretty exciting picture. Okay. We're talking about doubling output or tripling output, reducing, labor costs per project by, 50% or whatever it might be. And then we break it down into steps to get there, because you don't go from where you are today to, where you want to get to in one step. If you can get there in one step, I'd say you probably need to be a bit more ambitious in what you're trying to achieve. So we'll break that down into, okay, what are we going to do for the next 3 months and to step towards that goal? We're not going to do 15 things all at once. We're going to do 1 or 2 things at once. We're going to focus on that. We're going to put in a new quoting system, or we're going to, clean up the warehouse because it's an absolute mess. And we're going to focus on that and only that for the next sort of 3 months. And then we're going to move to the next thing and the next thing. And that's sort of a general way, a way of working. So we're working with the team, in parallel.
Yeah, and I would imagine as you improve on these things bit by bit, that things are going to pop up, more things that were not in the original map.
Yes.
Because you start to uncover some stuff. But the good news is, and this is what I found in business, is I think, well, I'll work with you for a year, and now it's been 3 and 4 years. Because we found, and now we're improving, we're doing all new things, we're in new markets. It's like you just get going and they start to really grab the value of it. But they really, again, they start to see the potential. They see what's been like, okay, there's a lot here. Because I always tell people when we start a business, I call it ignorance on fire. Okay. You're just going, right? You got to get it. You got to make money. You got to do stuff. So efficiency is not in the equation.
Yeah.
Okay. It just is not. We do it. We get out the door. We do the service. We do the product, whatever. But it's when you start gaining a little bit of momentum and you start to get, okay. I always encourage this a lot of my shows, Damien. It's like the earlier you can bring a consultant in,
Hmm.
the better off your business is going to be, and the more rapidly it's going to be able to grow controllably, right? You're going to have your hands on everything. You're not going to leave all this money on the table because you just rushed for market share, sacrificing your profit margins just to
Hmm.
gain market share, thinking you're going to get that back later, and you don't do the math on that either.
Yeah, no,
How hard it is to make up for all that lost money and what you now have to produce just to give it back. If you went a little slower, you'd already have. So it's
yeah.
it's a funny thing.
It is indeed. And just to pick up an earlier point there as well, is that not everything will go to plan, right? And you've got to accept a bit of uncertainty with the process. You can't plan something out for 3 years and it's all going to happen in neat steps, one after another. So being able to pivot and adapt and push through is super important.
And I think if you don't understand that, I'll say, or believe it,
Mm-hmm.
you must be asleep, because things change like by the day. I mean, not little changes. There's
Yeah.
so much things changing. Like it's almost difficult to do it. You definitely can't do a 5-year plan. 3-year, you're probably 3 years, with a bunch of caveats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like this could happen. You don't even know. It's hard to go out. I'm big on like 30, 60, 90-day stuff.
Yeah.
This is a year, but we're going to work in these increments, just like you do. You fix this and this, because it's just so much new stuff is out there. And I mean, some might not be usable, but I'm just saying that these long-term plans are a bit unrealistic.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
better off focusing a little more on the short term, and the short term could be 12 months. Like you said, break it up into, a few threes or whatever. But yeah, you really gotta, to not know that today is you're asleep at the wheel. I'm making that declaration. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, and also with implementation land, we think it's going to go smoothly, and people can kind of get a bit freaked, and we're putting in a new system. We put in this new quoting system. It's not working. The people don't like it, and there's a bit of pushback that needs to be. Sometimes we need to stay the course despite the bumps on the road.
Yeah, and I think it's, for me, you have to set the expectations. Like, this is going to be a problem here and here and here and probably here. We're going to have to work through this, but it's going to work out, okay? Because we're committed.
Yeah,
we're committed to this kind of stuff. If you don't have that, because there's a great saying, the gap between expectation and reality, you know what that gap is? It's called disappointment. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what the gap is. So you're going to end up in there somewhere, right? You're going to be kind of bummed out, but it's reality. But when you get to the other side and now it's working, I've seen this in a lot of like ClickUp and things like that, where now you're entering the data right at the machines and they're doing the stuff now. Now everybody knows, everyone's accountable. That's what they're really afraid of, Damien.
Yeah.
People are afraid of accountability, because now they enter everything they did and all this kind of stuff. Like, now we really know, right? Because they forget there's another objective to efficiency, like we want to be able to track this stuff. We want to see it. But once it's working, it's like, well, this is pretty cool. And now guess what? It becomes the norm. And then 2 years later, you're bringing in something new and you get the same cycle again. The complaints, the new, well, you said that 2 years ago about this and now you love it. So, so we have to manage those expectations, and that's up to leadership, right? To really, we're doing this, but here's what they tell us could happen, right? So we may get some of it, we may get all of it. We don't know.
Yeah,
but just be prepared. So you just got to hang in there and get it done.
Exactly right. But if you can get your team doing that day in and day out, a lot of owners will say, the culture here, there's, it's not what it should be. And how do we shift it? How do we shift culture? It's a sort of a common question. Solving problems as a team. There is no better way of developing, improving, creating a culture that you want than getting a group of people around, looking at a priority problem and come up with a solution and implementing it. I
couldn't agree more.
The way it happens.
And here's the thing, you have to train them as problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give them the permission to solve problems, because a lot of people, they don't think, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Not my job. And they all step back and they look at the saw for 30 minutes. Not my job. No one ever told me to, and it's like, it's funny, but it's real. So you go, no, I'm going to give you permission to do this, and here's the process. And you're right. When you get people in the room, again, guys on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I was talking to he was an operations specialist, and he said one first thing he does, he goes to the floor and starts talking to the guys, like, what's going on? Just being a friend.
Yep.
And just getting all the in and out. Another thing that he had that was really cool, Damien, was when they're hiring someone to come work, they actually send them to a random person
Mm-hmm.
on the floor. Just go have a conversation. There's no set questions. The guy on the floor isn't, hey, ask him this and that. Just go get the real scoop, right? They'll tell you what's really going on the floor and see if you want to work here, because he might go there like, you do not want to work here. I just thought it was funny, but they also get the real story.
That's it.
And they get and it's a great way to get good people on the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, they help us. They have us solve problems. We're able to fix our own stuff, and you got to be a little handy with this and this because we got to do that. So I need someone a little mechanical for this thing, and they start to really understand what it is. And it's just because nothing runs by itself.
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
Like you said.
That's it.
So I've had some great conversations on this same topic, and it's really the people who are really into it. The stuff they bring to the table is really fascinating. Like stuff you don't always think of, just like you probably do for these companies as well. I call it the outside eyes. When you bring in the outside eyes, you can walk in and go, oh, man, this is the hot man. I got a friend, he's unbelievably great at operations, right? He's worked for Kraft and Oscar Mayer, don't run all this stuff. He goes into place and you just want to be a fly on the wall because he sees stuff. Let me give you an example. So
yeah,
I like to share funny stories, Damien, but he's at this factory. They got like 400 million in this thing. Everything else, he's there and nothing's working. Okay. They got Walmart. They got Sam's Club showing up. Where's our stuff? Each line produces about $20 million worth of product. Okay. And nothing's going on. Like they got charts and they got nothing's happening. And here's the operations manager. So my buddy goes to the CEO. He goes, well, why is that guy smiling? And the guy goes, what? He goes, well, he's the operations manager, right? It's 10:30 in the morning. He's sitting at his desk, kind of leaning back, looking at his computer, and he's smiling. You got Walmart showing up, wondering where their stuff is. That's not good. Okay. Yeah. And he's smiling. That guy should be, he should be sweating. Yeah. Okay. Tears, and other bodily functions going on because he should be on his way out. Okay. And he's like, I never thought of that. He goes, well, you should think about it.
Yeah.
You may have the wrong guy in the seat. So it's just stuff that you can see in an instant because of your expertise. Again, you come in, it's not your child, like a lot of business owners, it's their thing. So they have this emotional attachment. So I'm a big fan of outside eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is amazing what you can see just by looking. I mean, I'm a big fan of data and, studies and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes you don't need that, right? You just walk out and you start talking, like you said, to the people in the process. They're there every day. They're seeing it every day, and you can get a lot of information, get a lot of insight, like really, really fast. A couple of tips for me when I do this pretty much, every week, multiple times during the week, walking into facilities. A couple of things I do when I walk into a facility is, firstly, just like if you can take a Polaroid picture, a snapshot in your mind of what's happening right now. Like you walk around, you see all these people doing stuff. All the people right now, what are they doing? And are they actually creating a product or delivering the service? Are they actually, if you're walking, on your roofing site, are they actually cutting, nailing, assembling, creating? Or are they stopped talking, looking at something, walking somewhere, picking something up, putting something down? And, chances are in that snapshot, there's only about 5% of the time getting spent actually making something. And the rest of it is people walking, talking, moving something from here to there. So that's a good sort of a rough indicator. Is productive work getting done here? And then the second thing is, where are things queuing up? Where are you seeing queues? If you can see a pile of parts or you can see a pile of stuff waiting for something to happen to it, that's also another sort of red flag as to where things are getting clogged up. But you can tell a lot just by looking.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think it was salary.com did a study for all businesses, and they came to the average. It's 2 hours a day per person wasted every day on the job. 2 hours a day.
Yeah,
So we can from phone scrolling to whatever, right?
yeah,
Smoking
yeah.
cigarettes, whatever it is. I'm like, wow.
Mm.
If you just had 10 people, that's 20 hours a day.
Yeah,
That's 100 hours a week.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
hundred a week. Like,
yeah.
do the payroll for that. Okay. And it's all varied all over the place. So you're exactly right. And this has to be factored into like what you do. We all do, right? We have to look at that necessity. Is it because like we have this thing about no one has unaccounted for time.
Mm.
There isn't,
That's good.
here, take this hour and a half and catch up. No,
Hmm.
there's no catching up. You have no unaccounted for time.
Mm.
I mean, it could be this particular thing. You're going to do this and this, and you can do a check and everything else. But like, if you get to that, now we can account for the time. And when it's
Mm.
being
Mm.
wasted, we understand what it's being wasted on. Right.
Yeah, and
So,
even that study there that you do refer to, that's a good outcome, I think, because only 2 hours. It's
only,
funny.
well, it's average, right? So some
Yeah.
people are wasting more and some people
Well,
are
this is the
wasting
thing, and
less.
sometimes it's not necessarily we can be hard on the people, but sometimes it's the process. So we do these studies. Like, this is a pretty standard step for us. We go in, we map process, we analyze the work. Okay, what's valuating, what's waste, and we add it all up, right? And we produce this analysis. On average, right? We're doing this every single week for hundreds and hundreds of businesses. On average, when you add up all of the steps that happen in a business and you compare it, is this actually valuating, or is this, some business administration? Is this, just mistakes? Is this people sort of wasting time on their phones? Turns out only about 5% of time, up to a maximum of 10%, right, of the time getting spent in an organization is actually creating the value in the company, right? You're actually building the product, or, you're delivering the service for your customer, and everything else, the 95%, the 90% of time is either pure waste, like mistakes, rework, errors, contingency stuff, or it's your business value add, the administration. I've got to hire someone, I've got to organize next week's schedule, I've got to deal with a supplier, we've got to do XYZ. It's great, it's important, you've got to do it, but it's not actually creating value for your customers. And so it can be a bit confronting for business owners to say, hang on, no way 90% of what happens in my business is waste. But there's just lots and lots of opportunity.
yeah, I agree. When my first business, I built custom water features. I'm doing steel sculpture. I was all about, so most guys are hand digging ponds, right? Shovels, picks. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like I'm getting mini excavators. I'm finding the tools
Yeah.
so my guys can work faster, but also have some longevity. I mean, how many years you want to dig holes for a living? Okay. Well, some guys do it for 30 or 40. Okay. So, but we ended up nicknaming ourselves the Special Forces of Pond Building, because we go in with 3 guys and do what other guys who do 15 or 20 would take them 30 days. We do it in 2.
Awesome.
Okay. And it was spectacular. Okay. Like, they can never equal our quality either, so I kind of got that, right? I kind of had that system. Here's this, and the guys knew, and it got to the point, like, they're doing great. I'm the artist, but they're doing everything. I come by, show up one day, and I jump in the hole. I start helping, doing whatever. And they're like, yeah, we don't do that right now. I'm like, okay. So I go do something else. They go, Richard, yeah, we don't do that now either. And I look at them, I go, well, you want me to just go get lunch? They go, that'd be the best thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone a favor.
So I'm like, I love you guys. I love you. You got the system. They work. I'm just messing things up. I'm making things worse. That's the best time. That's the best feeling for a boss to get kicked off the job site because you're screwing stuff up. You know what I mean? That's when your guys are dialed in. I love it. So it was funny. I mean, and I bought him a really nice lunch. Okay. Cause that's just like, I won't interrupt again, So yeah, it's really good. So, oh man, this has been awesome. I love the stories, but this whole approach I like this, Damien, because I think we got kind of a big picture. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just, hey, this is how you fix and automate a line. It really is it's a thought process. I think it really comes down to like how you think as an owner about your business. And I think you hit some really, really good points here. And I want people to take this with them, even if they listen to it again. Like, you have to change behavior. We talked about that, which I think is awesome. It's a mindset. It's systems thinking, this process, it's efficiency. What does it actually mean? And you hit a lot of great points on this. So just a lot of value add, speaking of that, to this. So if people want to get in touch with you, follow you, the drill. How do they do that? Let's, because someone's going to need your service. And how do we
for
get that
sure.
information?
The best way would be, jump on the website. You can type in OE Partners, O for operational, E for excellence, or you can track me down on LinkedIn. That's probably another good way. Just connect with me, and we can pick up the conversation from there.
I love it. So, if you guys are in this position, if this is resonating with you, I just encourage you to reach out, start the conversation. This is the hardest part for people to do. Just begin a conversation. Okay. Just get information, begin with information, and then you can move forward. Because if you don't have that, you're just going to tread water. You're going nowhere except to the bottom. Eventually you're going to the bottom, if that's all you're going to do. We want to have operational excellence. And Damien, you bring that to the table. I love it. This has been a blast. Any final quick thoughts before we wrap this up?
Look, I think one thing, obviously, there's a vested interest here a little bit, but get the help, right? Get the help.
That's it.
If you had all the ideas, if you had all the answers, you wouldn't have any problems. There are people out there who have solved this problem many, many times before. Get the cheat sheet and get your answer quickly. So that'd be the final word.
I love it. Time compression, everybody. We want to compress time, and you do that with experts. That's what they bring. They'll take 10 years and put it into one. So
exactly.
That's a good thing. So awesome. Damien, thank you again for being on. This has been awesome. And for everyone else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Sharpen the Spear podcast. If today's episode helped you think sharper, act smarter, or see new profit potential, do me a favor. Share it with a fellow home service owner and leave a quick review. Ready to find the profit hiding in your business? Head to sharpenthespearcoaching.com and book your free profit discovery call today. And until next time, keep sharpening.